Now coming back to you, Holly, Boris has skipped that debate and was replaced by the melting ice sculpture. You have made reference to this. Just how damaging a decision is this for the PM, considering his opposition was there? Jeremy Corbyn using the platform to promise to net zero carbon emissions by 2030.
Well, yes, that is more ambitious than the Conservatives, of course. Their policy, which Boris Johnson reiterated on a radio show that he took a phone-in on this morning, he said that the Conservatives remain committed to their pledge of reducing net carbon emissions to zero by 2050. That was a pledge, of course, made by Theresa May in earlier this year in June. And that is a world-leading pledge. But for many, of course, environmentalists here, and that is what many are campaigning about today as they take to the streets around the world and across the UK, they feel that that pledge isn't ambitious enough. The Green Party here have perhaps got the most radical pledge. They actually want to ban carbon emissions by 2030, but many of the parties question whether that is really deliverable, whether they actually can act upon that in that time, as it would mean replacing petrol and diesel cars with electric, huge infrastructure changes in terms of how homes here in the UK operate. But we've also seen what's being called in the UK a tree off, with many of the parties making pledges on the amount of trees that they want to plant. As you mentioned, Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn saying that 2 billion trees will be planted by 2040, and that is of course because they suck up carbon dioxide, and many of the parties now trying to make their own pledges in response to that. So in many ways, some people seeing Jeremy Corbyn as perhaps being stronger on the climate change issue, and it does really resonate with young voters here. We know that at least a third of the country see climate change as one of their top 3 priorities in this election, and many are questioning whether Boris Johnson is to his detriment, not focusing on that enough. Of course, not attending this climate action debate on Channel 4 last night. A row has since erupted over that. He's defended the fact that he didn't attend on a radio show this morning, saying he simply can't be everywhere and do everything. And as far as he's aware, more emphasis has been placed on the fact that he didn't attend and was replaced by this ice sculpture than has been on the actual substance of the debate and the priorities and promises that the leaders made. So in his opinion, he says the fact that he didn't attend is getting more news coverage than those substances, and that the Conservatives want to be a world leader in the fight against climate change.
Holly, stay with us. Let's listen in to what Prime Minister Johnson had to say about his absence in the climate debate.
I didn't see the debate, but it's notable that is the people have talked more about that than any of the substance that came out of the debate, and I think that's a shame. I think what we want to do is be a world leader in climate change.
Now, Holly, do you think these protests are making the right kind of noise in terms of climate policies seeming to be really top in terms of election manifestos, not just in the UK, but also around Europe and other parts of the world?
Well, yes, there's many, everybody really around the world, as I said, is sort of the climate debate has raged this year. We've seen, obviously, Greta Thunberg make emotional pleas at the UN conference in America. There's the COP25 event taking place in Madrid in the next few days. And, of course, a general election here in the UK, which for many will really signify, many will be looking to see how these leaders focus on climate change and what priority they give to it. In terms of their policies, many feel like the Conservatives maybe aren't paying enough attention to climate change. They, of course, deny that. What they are focusing on instead, seemingly, is the Leave voters. They maybe don't feel that Leave voters are as engaged on the climate debate as many other people are, particularly young voters. We've seen many protests take place here in the UK. The Extinction Rebellion movement, of course, taken huge prominence here. We've seen protests involving blockades, sit-ins, so-called die-ins, where protesters lie across streets. There will be several more of those in the run-up to the election, what's being called or dubbed the 12 days of crisis by Extinction Rebellion. So there's certainly a lot of noise in relation to the climate debate, and it remains to be seen whether the parties have yet sit up and heard that. Of course, we do know Boris Johnson is leading in the polls, but it's still very much we're still very early on in this race. There's still 2 weeks to go, and there's questions over whether his lack of appearance in this television debate on climate change will really affect how he does on December the 12th.
Holly, thank you for that report. That is WION correspondent Holly Hudson coming to us live from London on the global climate crisis debate.